We'll ask you first about the news of the morning as the president sits down with Kim Jong-un. Your thoughts on what you anticipate, what you expect, and what you would consider success.
Well, I think success, as we define it overall, is the denuclearization of North Korea. I am pleased that the president is sitting down with Kim Jong-un. I do think that is an important part of this process. But again, ultimately, to define success, it is denuclearization, and North Korea has to commit to that.
This mixes in pretty closely with what's happening with China. China's always been kind of the third party involved as someone who can help us a little bit with North Korea if they choose or slow things down. And that gets us to the China trade talks. Obviously, this is something that has played out in your state with soybeans and other issues that have gone there. What do you think about where we stand in the trade talks? What would you consider success on that front?
Well, success is if we can get a much better deal with China than what we have experienced in the past. Our Iowa farmers, they do stand behind the president. They really believe that this needed to be done, and they wish that this would have been done years ago. However, they want to see these trade talks wrap up, and we want to see a deal in place. China is our fourth largest export market for Iowa. They consume a lot of Iowa soybeans, so we do want to see those talks progress, and what we have heard is that there is substantial improvement in those trade talks as they go on, and I am very hopeful that we'll be able to wrap this up. I'm glad that the president did not put on that 25% tariff additional. He's holding off on that. That's a good sign that perhaps we are starting to see the wrap up of this deal.
Senator, you've been very focused on pork barrel projects, on anything that you think is using taxpayer dollars inefficiently. What do you plan to do on that front?
Well, we have a number of initiatives there. One is the Presidential Perks Bill, which is an allowance modernization act for former presidents, as they leave office. What we have seen is that taxpayers are footing the bill for their staff, for postage, for their phone expenses, their travel expenses, office, you name it. The taxpayers are paying for that. And many of our former presidents receive tremendous book deals. They get expensive speaking engagements. They charge enormous fees. So why is the taxpayer absorbing that? So what we're doing is putting a limit to the amount they can charge our taxpayers, and that would be for any future presidents. We also have the $1 billion Boondoggle Act that we are working on, which would require the director of the Office of Management and Budget to produce a report annually, give that to Congress, which will explain any of those projects, federal projects that are $1 billion over their original cost estimate, as well as 5 years beyond what their target completion date was. We are wasting a lot of taxpayer money on projects that are going on way too long. One example is the California Bullet Train, which is 13 years overdue. Yes, overdue, and $44 billion beyond the cost estimate.
Do you have support from your colleagues in the Senate?
We do. Matter of fact, the Presidential Allowance Modernization Act, the Presidential Perks Bill, is co-sponsored by a Democrat, Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. So we are getting bipartisan support on a number of these bills. We all believe we can do better for the taxpayers.
Senator, let me ask you, the House yesterday passed legislation that turns back the president's claim of a declaration of emergency on the border. And that now goes to the Senate, and according to Senate rules, I know it has to be fast-tracked. How will you vote on that legislation?
Well, I am leaning no on the resolution of disapproval, which means that I would support the president. And I do want to go through the text of the bill and see what is being proposed. The vice president joined us at lunch yesterday, our policy lunch, to discuss the proposal. We do have a crisis at the border. We do have a lot of illegal immigration going on there. And of course, as brought up by a colleague and in my state as well, we see a lot of issues with methamphetamine and so many drugs that are coming over the borders. If we can stop that by securing the borders, I think it's a job well done.